I'm a total beginner to Drupal, really. I've only really been learning it sort of last year or so. But I come from a front-end and UX perspective. But one thing we have been doing a lot more of is usability testing, specifically responsive usability testing, so testing on mobile platforms. I mean, do people here, are you already doing usability testing and preaching people that know more than me about this? Okay. So yeah, we've been really lucky that we work with a few clients that are really keen on usability testing as well. I think that's the biggest barrier on any project, is getting the client up front to be invested in the process, and obviously putting budget and time into it as well. So I'm just going to kind of recap over a few projects we worked on and a few tips as well. The person who I steal all my ideas from is Steve Krug. People here know about Steve Krug? And Rocket Surgery Made Easy, which is a fantastic guide on doing kind of budget usability testing, really. He doesn't really talk about responsive usability testing, but gives lots of really good tips. And the book before this, which still stands up, I think, sort of 15 years down the line, Don't Make Me Think, is a really fantastic book for UX tips and tricks and making websites much more usable for people. Yeah, some of his top tips that he gives away with performing usability testing. A morning a month, that's all we ask. So just kind of making it part of your process. So I guess this feeds into the last presentation about an agile process, and doing it as often and as much as you can, and trying to just make it part of the process. I guess in reality, and the way we found, is we've had clients who are really keen about it, but if you've not got budget for it and it's not really part of the process, it's obviously more difficult if you're really busy and you're on deadline to do usability testing. But just try and get it in there as much as you can, and just reserve some time for it. And start earlier than you think makes sense. So Krug talks about doing it kind of at the very early stage, just sketchy wireframes, and on clickable wireframes, then when you just like to release the site with visual designs, and then doing it once you release it as well. So really getting a sense that the website is constantly evolving and it's alive and it's always changing, and you can always be improving it as well. And recruitment, which a lot of clients always ask about as well, is what type of people should we recruit to actually do the usability testing, and it's a really important part of it. But Krug's great because he's so open about it, saying actually it's not really that important. As long as you're testing with people, it's good to get specialists. If you're doing a specialist website, saying you're doing something with doctors or something that had very, very specialist information, you obviously want people who know that information to be able to test it in a real life study. But then if you're testing with people who know nothing about sort of about rocket surgery, for instance, it's still good to test with people who don't know anything about it, just to make sure that it makes sense to complete beginners as well. And grade on a curve as well. So obviously in terms of how their specialist knowledge stacks up against what they're seeing and doing about the website. And make it a spectator sport. I think this is probably one of the most important ones, is get as many people to observe it as possible. And from the work we've done, the projects we've had on it, obviously get the client involved, get them to come to the observations as well. So if you just send them the videos afterwards, they're probably not going to read them, not going to watch them, but having them there in the office or there during the usability test is so beneficial to the whole process. Also get your development team, if you can, to have a look as well, observe, and people, trustees, CEOs, anyone, to get them to try and observe and come as long as possible. Free coffee, snacks, treats, things like that. It's all really good to try and get people to come along and observe the sessions. So we do it in our office at Curve, and we've got a little office to the side. And this whole talk is really about doing it on Shoestring budget. We kind of, when we first started looking into it, we did look at getting costs from kind of usability experts and big companies that specialise in that very one particular service, and we realised we couldn't fit this within our budget really. So we thought, well, we can have a go and try and do it ourselves. And with responsive as well, how would we go about actually testing on different devices, not just on the desktop? So this is kind of one of the sessions. So we have a little room. I'll talk a little bit more about the setup later. The first thing was actually how to get a setup on a responsive device and how to record that data. The most important thing is tracking the screen, but where people's fingers are and how they're moving around the screen. Not quite so easy as doing it on desktop where you can track the mouse pointer. So one of the first ones we looked at was MrTappy.com, which is an American piece of kit that you can buy online. It's a bit like a, sorry? Is it New Zealand? Oh, okay. Sorry. I think it was the dollars that just made me think it was American. Have you used MrTappy or?
No, we couldn't justify it. I'm sure you'll probably say.
Yeah. Well, we looked into it, looked at the costs, and also looked at the setup. It was mail order from New Zealand, so it would take a long time to get here, I guess. Also seemed quite fiddly, seemed quite wobbly as well, so the results we didn't think really justified the price. Anyone care to gander how much that costs? I guess it's New Zealand dollars, so you might tell me the exchange rate.
Well, we've got a very strong dollar.
Oh, okay. Oh, my sound's not working. I did a very great sound effect. To make this, I need to. So yeah, so £150. Okay, so that's for what it is. It seems quite a lot. We then looked at the other end of the spectrum, so we read lots of blog posts about doing it yourself. So this one is bendy HD Hue webcams, which are attached onto the back of a phone case. So we actually did this ourselves and tested it out. And there's a great blog post here that tells you about how to put it all together. And it's kind of still, £60, so £49 for the camera, and then £10 for the iPhone case. But it's quite wobbly. You're kind of sticking things with Velcro and cable ties. It's a bit hacky. Didn't really seem that professional. Also, getting people to hold the camera still whilst they're doing it and passing it to a recruit that's never seen this kind of device before, it just wasn't very robust or steady, which is the most important thing. So we designed our own. This is kind of a very rough prototype that we made, cardboard and Velcro and plasticine, just to get the angle correct, really. And that was kind of testing it with the mobile here and the camera at the top. So the most important thing was to get the angle and the sturdiness correct. And then we took it to a plastic moulding specialist engineering factory who drew up some very rough plans, and then they created this really nice plastic sled for us, and that was £50 for the plastic sled. It's quite reasonable, I thought. And then the webcam was £15 as well, and this does the job for us as well. So it's kind of a cut price solution that we've used again and again on multiple projects. And obviously, we're using an iPod Touch rather than an iPhone, which is cheaper. It's second hand, I think, from Computer Editing Exchange. And then the other cost, the big cost is recruits. This is probably the most expensive part of it. So they need an incentive to take part. We haven't actually tried it without an incentive. I think if you do an incentive, then make sure they turn up, take part in it. So here you've got a lot of options. I think the lowest you can probably go to is about £10, if cash is always good. Probably £20 is the higher end of the scale. And then if you want to test between sort of 12 and 18 people, so you're looking at a range between £120 to £360. And there are other ways to do it with vouchers and other kind of incentives as well, so it might not necessarily just be cold hard cash. But that's another sort of big part of the budget. And this was the observation room and testing room, the setup we had for the usability testing. So in the testing room, the divider here in the office, the testing room, you've got a desktop PC running Camtasia, which is screen recording software, running Skype. So feeding the audio through is the observation room, so we can hear you. A speakerphone, the iPod Touch and the webcam testing sled in that room. That's all thread. The output from the desktop PC is fed through into the flat screen TV outside, and then outside in the observation room you've got the laptop. So you've got a laptop outside hosting the Skype call, so everyone can hear it. And then because you don't want the audio distracting the recruit, and you kind of almost want them to feel like they're in a private space, not being observed, although you need to tell them they are being recorded and they are being observed. It's not to put them off too much. Using headphones to make sure that the sounds are seeping through the other room. So the cost total up. The testing sled at £50, the webcam at £15, the iPod Touch about £100. Camtasia software, £68.50. So this is one that Krug recommends. So it's really good for editing video on the fly and exporting it, and it's just really quick and easy to use. obviously lots of different options you can have for screen printing software. We just found it a reliable, robust solution. Recruits 120, I guess, is about the minimum, so this can go up. And then the grand total of £353. So that's kind of doing it on a shoestring, really. I think that's probably about the minimum you can get away with. Do you agree with that?
In person, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, this is the result of the view you actually get through the webcam. And this is being put out to the screen outside, so the client can hold it. And a way of doing it, a 4-day plan, this is probably, again, you can obviously take this as long or as short as you want, but I guess this is about a minimum if you're doing usability testing around a new project. So you can probably do it in about 4 days, advice. So if you start on Monday, do 3 mobile tests, so 3 different groups in the morning, and then 3 desktop tests in the afternoon, so you do 6 all in one day. So that's the same website on mobile and a desktop, resizing up to the different classes, but no changes in between, because you want to make sure it's you've got the test scenario correct. And then after that, write up and amend. So we have the client in the room at the time as well doing the testing. Everyone coming up with their issues and any usability problems or hurdles that they've seen the user experience. So you write those, make the amends on the Tuesday. You can't, unless you're very fast and very good, you can't get all the amends in one day. So you need to kind of pick a hierarchy as to what are the most important amends you need to make a change, and then try and do all that on one day. Then on the 3rd day, another 3 mobile tests on the new amended site, and another 3 desktop tests as well. And this is also a good time maybe to do a few experiments as well, so things that you're not quite sure about, things that you might think might change it, just to give them a test and see what impact they have. So it kind of multivariate A/B testing. And the Thursday write up amends as well. But you can take this further. You can do a whole another 3rd day of testing on the Friday. Yeah, I think this is probably about the minimum. And the reason for 3, this is something that Krug is a big advocate of, is if you have 3 people testing a website, you're probably going to find all the big problems out after 3 tests. And anything really major, you'll find in your first one. So there's very little gain from doing it with sort of 6, 9 people. I know Nielsen recommends sort of using like 18 people or so, which obviously puts your budget up and puts the time up and makes into a much bigger process. So this is a really good, rapid prototyping experimental phase. And it's true, if you've tested 3 people, normally all your big problems will come out. And then by the Wednesday, and definitely by the Friday if you do a 3rd day, you're then refining it and doing little tests and little experiments. And I'll show some examples of this and some of the cases later on. So this is outside in the observation room. This is one of our UX guys on the left, helping sort of write the problems and the issues. I'm inside in the office through the wall, and then our client in yellow, so it's helpful that they weren't the same colour as well. But like I said, it's really important to have them in the room for the whole 3 days that you're testing as well. And another really good thing about this is it helps you build a relationship with the client as well. So you're obviously focusing on the usability, and here we're testing wireframes, but then you spin off during lunch and just talking about the process as a whole. And because it's, in this instance, you're talking about wireframes, and we were testing really the architecture, and the navigation, and the labeling. All that kind of discussion and all that theory can just be so much more quickly than doing it over email and phone calls and liaising with the client remotely. So yeah, it's really beneficial just for having the client in the room and building that relationship there. And then, as I said, we would all write down all the issues that we found, so put them all on post-it notes, and then at the end of the day or over lunch, reorder them to what are the most important ones. And then we decide, these are the ones we're going to focus on the amends, on the testing days. Also gives you room for writing down, jotting down little ideas. Big thing with the wireframes was the wording and the terminology, so options like that, which is difficult to pin down. You really need to test it. So a few kind of tips that we've kind of discovered from doing these tests. The scenarios that you choose. So at the beginning of the process, the first thing you need to do is kind of continue looking at your user stories and agree with the client what scenarios you're going to test. So the tests we've done range between sort of half an hour to 45 minutes. So I'd say about sort of 10 to 12 scenarios is a good amount. But the ones you do first are totally going to colour the rest of the tests. So the first two are critical, really. And with the wireframes, we have done the thing of kind of you talk us through the homepage and just explain, without clicking on anything, explain what you think this website is about. If you're doing it on a fully fledged designed website, then you might want to skip that part and just get straight into the scenarios. Yeah, the first two, you need to think about what is the key operation of the website, what is it the client needs to get out of the website, and make sure they can do those, because whatever they do after that, they've already have that prior knowledge, so they're already familiar, and then it kind of becomes slightly unnatural as well, because I'd say often when a user is looking at a website, they might come for one or two things, or they might come for one purpose, and then they might hopefully go on to looking at other things. But if they can find that one thing, get it, and then they're gone, then you've succeeded really. And if you make that as easy and as usable as possible, then you need to find it out straight away. Another really important thing that we found out is testing sideways. So I think this is almost like a symptom of doing it responsive first as well. So obviously doing it mobile first, you put a lot of thought into the ordering of the content and making sure that all the key operations and the wording, it's all really nice and simple and laid out on a mobile device. And it makes it very easy. You probably put a lot of thought into sort of drilling down into content, maybe there's 3 or 4 layers down. So we, on one project, we tested a lot, sort of drilling people down, and then sent them back to the homepage. So then there's one thing that people, you can experiment with, whether you want to send back to the homepage or whether you want to continue with a natural journey. Or so that site was really good for actually drilling down the content, but then when it actually came into it, it wasn't that great at testing the site, moving sideways, so moving within that section, so moving from one page within that area into another page very close by. It wasn't quite so easy on desktop. So it's kind of like a balancing act of make sure all these things influence and play together. So make sure you test sideways as well. So if you have maybe one scenario in one section, make sure you do a quick test of how they can get to a page next to that page as well. Also, I said you can experiment with sending them back to the home page, and that's really important to do. Just make sure they can get to back to the home page, whether they click the logo or whether they need a button that says home. But if you're doing that every time, that's probably kind of a natural way for them to behave on the website. So yeah, kind of keep it natural. Like I said, maybe after the first 2 scenarios, you want to not have to reset the test every time. Just kind of get them to move around the website as naturally as possible, which can be really hard. We've got some people who will just use the website as they would in the real world, although from sort of experience, I'd say that's probably in the minority of people who do that. Some people are very aware they're doing a test, and they feel, even though you've prepped them and said, you can't do anything wrong here, we want to get your honest, true behaviour and your honest, true opinions. They do treat it like a test, and they'll try and do everything as perfectly as possible, and they'll give you sort of too much explanation, really, or keep going back to the home page, ask if it's okay to go back to the home page. It's like, just do whatever you want. So yeah, I mean, Krug has a really fantastic script that you can have a look at and download from his website of how to prime the. Sorry, I sound like a massive Krug sort of fanboy there, but he has a great script where you can sort of prime the user before you start the test, telling them, you can't do anything wrong here. I'm going to give you the scenarios, but you need to kind of keep it natural as possible, really, and kind of asking them a few questions at the beginning just to kind of open them up as well and get them used to talking. Some people are great at that and explaining. Some people are too good at it and just explain every single thing that they're reading, which is where putting things like lorem ipsum in just totally kind of spiral the test into a weird scenario where people are trying to read lorem ipsum and getting totally cut. And no. And then if you're doing wireframes, links don't work either, so you have to do a lot of explanation. So one thing we found is with wireframes, you need to get them as high fidelity as possible, really, and get all the links working, and any kind of functionality, ideally, it needs to be in there. So wireframes can be tricky to test, which is probably why it's better to do it with a fully fledged website. But yeah, try and keep it as natural as possible. And then on the other hand, you'll get some people who will not explain what they're doing at all, and they'll just kind of go up and down the website, being very lost, very confused, and you have to keep kind of hitting them on to try and explain what they're doing. Also, presume nothing. Every user is unique. Just one thing we found, you'll get some people who will do it very, very quickly, and they'll do everything as expected. You go, yeah, I've got a fantastic usable website, and then all of a sudden they'll do something totally random that you weren't expecting, and then you'll get some people who won't know what anything is or understand anything, even though the last 3 users have all understood it. So it's really interesting to look at how these people behave, especially on mobile phones, and how everyone uses it slightly differently. Yeah, then suddenly they'll, out of not understanding anything, they'll just then understand something that the last user didn't know. So it's very difficult to predict, really. So yeah, that's why testing and carrying on past the testing is always really useful. So yeah, this is one of the videos, one of the screen grabs from the mobile testing we did on a website for Relate, the marriage counselling charity. So yeah, this is quite interesting. Hopefully you can hear this. Another really good thing to do is make sure you're recruiting people from lots of different demographics as well. So with Relate, we're quite lucky because they didn't really, they wanted people who had heard of Relate and maybe had used the services there, but then they also wanted people who had never heard of Relate, so they wanted to test with that, with total unknowns as well. So it was kind of a 50-50 in terms of recruitment, and it was also well-known charity, so people, it wasn't difficult to recruit for this really. Yeah, this is quite an interesting video as well, and also testing with people of different ages as well, and how they use technology. You can't hear that one. I'll try and explain what I'm explaining to him. I'm asking him to look at the boxes here with the icons and tell me what he thinks the icons mean. So he gets his chat and he understands his contact, but he has no idea what the icon on the left is. The well, we thought it was obvious it's a location pin. And then he mentions this is listings. And then from here we ask him to turn it down there. Yeah, it's really interesting because he does things instantly. Like he uses this drop-down item here quickly to find out more about counselling. But later on we ask him to find out more about Relate, and there's an about link within this menu here. But he doesn't see that as a menu whatsoever. So it's all that kind of differences of what you need to put labels on, and also being a web designer and being people who use the web all the time, we take these things for granted. So we might think 3 lines is obviously a menu, whereas that's still not really caught on, I don't think, outside web design circles really. And you still need, from testing, you still need labels, so you need the word menu. You'll see that later on. But a really good thing about this was he did get the jump menu, and Relate were really keen. They have all these things called life channels. We have different types of relationships. So children, young people, retired couples, marriage counselling, sex therapy, and they wanted to try and have all that on the homepage, all above the fold, and they wanted it all as links. That's far too much information to put all on the homepage. All as one of the first things you see. So we talked about having this drop-down menu, and a lot of people understood that straight away. So that's really cool. Yeah, and here's the wireframes here. So for the wireframes here, we used Adobe Edge Reflow, this wireframe on the left, and then this is the final mobile site here. So you can see the differences between the icons here that just shown in the test. So the menu, we ended up putting a label on that, on the final one. Search box, putting the word search on as well, and with the map pin. The map pin, which fooled a lot of people, we put nearest relate, so the nearest relate icon on there. And yeah, we kept the drop down quite similar, and then obviously adding colour and design changes it as well. And we're hoping to do some more usability testing with the final design on this as well. And yeah, choose changes carefully. It really is like a Rubik's Cube. You'll think everything, you'll do a couple of tests, and then you'll do some iterations, and you'll think that everything is going swimmingly. And then you'll try a little change, a little amend just to kind of see what it is, and then we'll just throw everything off. So one example here, this is like the 3rd iteration on the Relate site on the desktop wireframe. The client was really keen to get the FAQ section, which was quite a popular part of the website. So with this project, we were kind of they already had the main Relate site, but they wanted a total overhaul basically, and we had to rethink the whole architecture of the site. But they were really keen to keep the FAQs, really popular part of the site. So in the last iteration, we tried putting FAQs up on the main menu navigation. And this had a weird, unexpected result in that the main focus of the site, they have an online chat function, which is taught to relate. So that's a global navigation that goes across all their different sub-sites as well. And relationship help, which is the route into the live channels, and then this jump menu here on the homepage is another route in the live channels. But by putting FAQs up in the main menu, when we ask the user to look for information about counselling or any kind of question, because I think a lot of people are familiar with the term FAQ, whereas they might not be totally sure about the wording of relationship help, they instantly went to the FAQ, and then from there you'll then gone down a different route to what you're expecting. So it really is like a balancing game of getting everything in the right place and finding the best compromise as well. And then just the final desktop design for the case study. So yeah, it's quite, as you can see, it's quite similar to the original wireframe. Another really important thing that is quite often overlooked is the importance of taglines, which we found especially with the wireframes, and making sure when you're testing something that's quite blank and so many images or designs, you're trying to get people to tell you what they think the website's about within 3 or 4 seconds. And I think we tried it without taglines to begin with, people struggled, and then as soon as we put a tagline in, people get it straight away. So just to kind of demo, I've just kind of picked out a few taglines, maybe tell me which websites you think these are the taglines for. And when I say taglines, sometimes they're next to the logo in the top left-hand corner, or now the trend, I think, is to have very big text, kind of have a very simplified homepage with very big text. Does anyone care to mention your website then? Netflix. Yeah. I haven't got any prizes, I'm afraid. But, free encyclopedia. Say it? Yeah. Start a conversation, explore your interest in the nerd. What? No. Twitter, yeah. And this one, surely this one. So, you know, say. So yeah, really important to have taglines as well. So you see, another website we did was for YMCA Club, their gigantic gym they have in London. So the largest gym city in central London. And here you can see this is so after we did the usability testing wireframes, we made clickable wireframes for YMCA. We kind of learned a lot from our first project with Relate about making the website, the wireframes much more high fidelity. So you've already got the menu tagged wording next to the icon there. And yeah, one interesting aspect which we've kind of discussed in the office is whether you should put images into your wireframes or not. And I think if you do start putting images in, then you're kind of starting to design the wireframes quite a bit. And you need to be, if you put in a random image of a dinosaur or something on a gym website, then it's just going to totally, it's the same case as the Lorem Ipsum case, that it's totally going to confuse your user. I guess you could put in something quite generic of someone in the gym for this kind of scenario. But often people do understand that you don't have just having the word image, that they get it, that an image will be there. Although the one people that we tested with, which I'm not sure was a good idea, was designers who, even though you warn them that this is a wireframe, it's going to be very grey, no images, and this isn't the final site, the first thing they'll say is it looks really boring and it's grey and there's no images. So because they're just so familiar with how websites work, although he was a graphic designer, so it did all pretty well. But it's interesting anyway, testing it with different people, and in a way it's good to get that response as well, so to get feedback across the board. So for here we were testing, I think YMCA, the most important thing was claim a free day pass and getting into the class as well, so we put a free day pass in a big yellow box. And on Relate, really nice, we put this live in February, and the big thing for them, where a lot of the money was spent, was on the live chat. So they have a fantastic service where you can counsellors live chatting via text, by typing in a live chat service. So we put someone in a big red button and put to Relate here, and also the nearest Relate. And a really nice result of this was that For us, it was a nice result. They couldn't handle all the live chat they were getting, so they had to like totally change all their working hours, and they couldn't afford for the counselors. So it just proves just the success of usability testing and how important it is. And yeah, with YMCA, we've just launched this site this week actually. Here's the desktop version of it as well. So we tested on the wireframes for that a few months ago, and then it's been in development for a few months, and now we've just launched the website this week. So and they want to do some usability testing in the next couple of months on the live site as well. So yeah, we're looking forward to doing more of that. And yeah, the responsive approach works really well for this. I'm getting to test that, having all that videos. I'm sorry the video didn't work. That's going to cut my short a little bit short. Cut my talk a little bit short. But thanks for your time.
Some of the YMCA one that you have the menu and have the words menu there.
Yeah.
Do you find that was that a young audience or audience?
Yeah, I mean this was a slightly different scenario. The designer of this, it was the YMCA actually designed it, did the visual design, so based on our wireframes. And he was a print designer, so he was very conscientious about the pixels and the iconography. And even though we suggested that the menu works much better with a label on it, he kind of went against usability testing, and it was tried to fight that argument. But we just thought, well, we're going to do more usability testing on this. It's going to come around, and then we're going to have to change it again. So we can either have this discussion, we can fight it now to the death, or we can wait till a few months later on. But yeah, I mean, it looks neater, but it would be much better to have a menu.
Still failed usability testing like that.
We did test it. I mean, we tested it with we haven't done usability testing on the live version, and we did it on there and it worked straight away. So I advise, from what we did on Relate, that you need to have a menu label on there, but it doesn't look as neat, arguably. And you're pushing content further down on a mobile device as well. So it's kind of weighing it up. And they, I think they're thinking, well, what we discussed was that they have a younger audience who are very web savvy, who are going to use the mobile response, and they're going to know what a menu is. But usability testing, we tested with this, we tested with people who go to the gym, which a very broad audience. So I don't think that's necessarily true.
How do you pick up new recruits? You just go for them wherever?
Well, they've got a gym in London, and they're like a one-off site. So for this, we did the testing in our office in Leeds. We just got people, we kind of sent a lot of emails around, put lots of Facebook, Twitter, just social media. We're in a big office block with lots of other companies, so it's really fortunate actually. Not just design companies as well, people working for Asda or manner of different people. So yeah, we just put emails out and got friends and people to come in. But the most important thing is not to tell them anything really about the site, about what you're going to test them on. Don't give them any prior knowledge whatsoever.
Do you find that approach generally recruits quite web savvy people?
Well, I guess we did a lot of it over email. So yeah, I mean, we get a good spread, I think, from that method. And now I'm kind of building a pool of recruits. So I've got around 50 people. And as soon as you say you'll get £20 for looking at a website half an hour, but people are like, yeah, I'll come do it.
I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think you turned me down, didn't you? Yeah. Nice. But yeah, I mean, it's good to test with web savvy people and non-web savvy people as well.
Do you reuse people for different tests?
Yeah, so on Relate, we did use people again on YMCA, but when we're going to test the YMCA live site, I wouldn't use people who did the wireframe. So we need to find like 20 more new people. So, and you've all seen it now, so normally you
Do you record the faces as well when they're looking, for that puzzle look of?
No, I don't. Yeah, no, I know some people do, and it's not something we've done. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Being able to see the emotion. I mean, you can tell a lot. I mean, sorry, the video you can't hear the sound, but you can tell a lot by silence, basically. That you can tell that they're just scrolling up and down on the website. They don't know what they're doing. And I know you can test. They're frustrated, they're angry. I don't know whether you particularly need to be able to see their face to tell that.
It's kind of you, if you need to do a presentation to the clients and they don't see it, would you guys go through, you get a screenshot of the presentation where the site and the person also every in their hands. If you screen grab that and put it in the presentation.
Yeah.
So
It gives you more evidence.
Yeah.
Yes, like to fight your corner. I've not mentioned Drupal at all in this talk, actually. So these are both Drupal sites. So yeah, that's my Drupal connection.
Do you do this usability testing for all?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, yeah, we kind of, when we're pitching new work or if you get new work coming in, it's something we're always saying we need to use usability testing and we're trying to, make our solution very user-centric, really. So yeah, but sometimes you'll get a client that I know we don't need that. And then, I mean, if we do wireframes, I'll test it with you anyway, and just be like, you understand this, and it's
I suppose that's traditional approach.
Yeah.
Do you get much resistance from clients?
I mean,
to do this,
yeah.
It's a great idea.
I mean, we work a lot with charities, profits.
They spend the extra bit of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're trying to keep it kind of within a reasonable budget. We're not talking tens of thousands of pounds, smaller budgets. But yeah, the benefits you get are just so advantageous.
I suppose it engages the client.
Yeah. I think also working with charities and non-profits, they're all about the user, and they're all about the customer, and a lot of them are very willing to try out straight away.
And add to that, I suppose, if the client's not willing to spend money on it, and tend to just like absorb that cost, because it's a chance to build a strong relationship with the client, and also to learn more about the site. And when they see people doing that thing, they want to do more of it.
Yeah, because they can
Because
see
the
the
value
benefit.
that it brings. Depends.
just curiosity, so I know that money is money, but time is money. So in that diagram you had about the time, you didn't say how long you spent writing this. So I'm curious.
Yeah, I should have said all this text preparation.
Well,
and,
I think I just know from experience that I think maybe writing a text, particularly the first it does take a while. So I don't want to mention it. It's not just a 1 hour job.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need someone, project managing it and leading it as well. So yeah, it's not just something your design guy can do on the side. It's someone doing it. With the related site as well. Another way we recruit for this, we also commissioned a bunch of photography for the website as well, because they use a lot of studio shot stock photography, and it was really horrible. And they wanted to go with this very kind of naturalistic, real approach using real people. So we also sort of canvassed around a bunch of dramatic societies in Leeds and Bradford, and got a load of people to come along and post the photography. That was like over a weekend, and then on the week after, we then did the usability testing and using a lot of the same people. And a lot of those people kind of wanted to do photography because they'd heard it relate and had a kind of connection to it, so they wanted to help them out. But yeah, that was a lot of project management and a lot of. Cool.
When you're inviting your clients into your watch the user doing this, do you ever run into someone being an over stakeholder, and then when someone they'll pounce on someone doing something that really relates to a thing that they really want to happen in the project? Yeah. Is that difficult?
Yeah, I mean, I think originally, like at the very first, on the first day, they'll kind of be trying to, I won't name names, but yeah, you'll have certain people, like directors, be like, can you do this again? And they'll keep asking them the same question over it, because you have a bit of time at the end where the people in the observation room can phone in to the test and ask some questions, which is really useful sometimes, but sometimes you kind of need to tell the client to, get their nose out of it, but in a polite way. But yeah, but then I think over the course of a few days they'll realise that it's not, they've lost their ground basically, their ideas and work, so they've got to kind of leave it behind. Yeah, on the flip side of that, on the Relate site, we did another site for Relate at the same time called Parenting Trouble Teenagers. So lots of issues around teenagers. And we had a lad who came in and did the testing, and he was about 18. As he was reading through the content, and he was very conscious, he was in a test, and he was being really well behaved and sort of reading through everything and saying like, oh yeah, that's an issue for my friend, and oh, that's really important. I'm really glad you've got that content on there. That's really important. And then the client at the end, they phoned in and started and kind of turned it into a focus group. Started asking him lots of information about what content would work really well. So for that, they got a lot out of that. Actually. Yeah, that's kind of a minority case, really. All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Yes.